everyone, Canadian Ride 705 here. This video is going to tell you how to check your motorcycle before you take it for a ride. Now this video applies to all motorcycles, but I'm demonstrating today on a 2018 Indian Scout Bobber. The most important part of your inspection actually takes place as you're walking up to the vehicle, and this is true for all vehicles. From a distance, as you approach the bike, it's obvious if you're looking for it, if there's anything really out of place, such as, for example, if there's a puddle underneath the bike, then there's a good chance that you have some sort of fluid leak. If there's a gouge in the tires, or if something's hanging off of the bike, even a small part, you will notice it best if you're looking for it when you first approach the bike. Now, once you get up to the bike, the first thing that you want to check is your tires. The reason that you're checking your tires first, and the reason that you'll see if you do any more research on a bike inspection, is that your tires are one of the most important parts of the bike, and they're one of the most common parts to fail, such as, for example, if you get a puncture in your tire or if it has a slow leak. You're not really going to notice if you jump on it and go for a ride necessarily. It might feel fine until you're out on the road. Now, checking your tires on a bike, really what you want to do is you want to check what the specs are on the tire. And if you have a tire gauge like this, it's really good because you can set it to, all the different pressure settings. I just use PSI. And once you check it, it keeps the reading for you. So you don't have to hold it on there and leak out air to check it. You just put it on once, you'll hear a puff of air as it makes connection, and then you take it off and you can look. Now, there's tire pressures listed in your manual, but those are for the tires that came with the bike. So with the Scout Bobber, for example, it comes with Kenda tires, and there's a certain pressure setting for the front tire and for the rear tire. Now, these tires are new. These are Michelin Commander 2s, and they have possibly different pressure settings. The only way to know for sure is to actually look at the sidewall of the tire and see what it says. You want to go by that, don't go by the manufacturer's specs. Now, with tires as well, on a motorcycle, they actually have a lot of material on the inside that keeps the shape of the tire. So if you think, like with your car, that you can just kick your tire or, hit it with your hand or something small and listen for it to tell if it's empty, you actually can't. A motorcycle tire won't be obviously flat, even if it has very little air in it. So you have to check it with a pressure gauge. After you check your tires, you want to move on to your brakes. Your brakes are the next most important part of your bike when you're riding, and one of the more common parts that will fail on you. Your brakes might be worn out. There might be an issue with the actual brake cylinder. There might be an issue with your fluids, such as they might have air in them. The quickest way to check them really is just take a quick look at the pads. Make sure that you still have your indicator lines in the pads, which is like a groove down in the pad. Every bike's different, so you might want to check and see exactly what the specs are supposed to be on that. But usually a quick visual inspection is enough to know that at least they're there and they're going to work. Check both your pads, front and rear, and then you want to get on the bike and just roll it forward a little bit with your feet and engage the front brakes and see that they work. Then do the same with the rear. Roll it forward a little bit and engage the rear brakes and just make sure that they work and that you don't have any issues with them. Now next, you want to check the electronics on the bike. So the electronics really covers everything. What I like to do is on the Scout Bobber, there's a display that you can scroll through to. And when you scroll through to it, it tells you your exact battery level. So anything above 12 volts is fine. Once you get used to your bike, you'll know about where it sits. Sometimes it sits just above 12, 12.6. Sometimes it sits all the way up at 14. It just depends on your bike and how it's made and how good your battery is. But if it's above 12, you won't have any issue. Now, if that's good, I'll leave the key on. I usually put on the hazard lights. So however you do that on your bike, just put on the hazard lights. And then you can check your indicators and make sure that all 4 indicators are working. You can also be more advanced and you can put on your individual turn signals and make sure they're working. But generally speaking, the hazard lights at least tell you that the lights are working, the relay's working properly, everything's good with that. There's no reason not to be more thorough, but that's a quick way of doing it, is just check your hazards, and then you can get into your turn signals if you want to. I also check the brake lights. So if there's a way for you to look back and just see how your brake light illuminates when you press the front brakes, make sure that it comes on, and then also make sure that it comes on when you press the rear brakes. because each lever has its own switch that will light up the brake lights for you. You want to make sure that both are working. Next, you want to check your controls. So you take your handlebars and just turn left to right all the way. Make sure that you don't get stopped somewhere, such as, for example, if you have a snagged cable or something like that, or a wire that's too short or caught up on something. You might never have an issue with your bike for years, and then all of a sudden, if there's something there that hangs you up, that could be you falling off your bike when you go to take it down the road and you go to do your first, major turn around a corner. As well, squeeze your clutch lever, your brake lever, put on your rear brakes. Make sure that all of those controls are working for you. After your controls, you want to check your fluids. So on your fluids, on this bike, the Scout Bobber, 3 fluids. It has brake fluid in both of the brake cylinders, which are separate. It has the engine oil, and it has the rad fluid. Now for the oil, every bike is possibly different. You want to take a look in your manual and see exactly how you're supposed to check the oil. Sometimes you check it with the bike on the kickstand, leaning to the side. Usually you check it, when it's upright. They might want the oil warm first, which is what they want on the Indian Scouts. So you want to heat up your oil by running your engine for a bit before you check it. But at this point, do whatever you're supposed to do and then check your oil level. Make sure that it's not too high. Too high can cause engine damage. And also, you want to make sure that it's not too low. The other 2 things that you want to check for, which are very important, is your oil colored when it comes off the dipstick? If it's oil colored, then you don't have any major issues. If it looks milky white, that means that there's some sort of water in the oil. And it could be that you have leaking seals, so that you have radiator fluid in your oil, which is sort of a major problem. It could be that somehow water got into your engine. That also could potentially be a major problem because it shouldn't be a way for it to get in there. Your oil might also be very dark, or if it's gritty. If it's dark or gritty or both, you might be overdue for an oil change because oil does darken over time as it collects, exhaust residue from the engine. Or it could be that the engine is being damaged and there's some grit in there. It could be steel, metal filings or something like that. That's sort of a big deal as well. In either case, you're going to want to do some more research if it looks that way. Next, you want to check your chassis parts. So your chassis parts are any part of the frame on the bike, any part of the bike that things are mounted to. It's sort of like the main part of your bike. If your chassis fails, you could have major issues, right? Your bike might fall apart while you're riding it. It's not common, but on an older bike, it definitely could happen. And I mean, on a newer bike, maybe it was shipped out defective. There's no way to know unless you actually check it over very thoroughly. So what you want to do is inspect close up all of the frame members of your bike, wherever anything connects, such as your tires connect to the bike, or where the handlebars connect. You want to look for cracks, and crack might just be a paint line that's come off of the bike. That might be the only indication that you have of some sort of crack forming. You want to look for rust. Rust in a crack, like in a straight line, is an indicator of a problem with your chassis. If you find anything like that, that also could be pretty serious, and you want to look into it. Now, this is a good point, or a good time to note that when you're inspecting your bike, this is something that you should be doing all the time. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't do this every time I take my bike out for a ride. I do a basic, quick inspection on it. But every once in a while, I will do like a very thorough inspection, such as this one that I'm showing you how to do. And, it's up to you to decide how important it is to check every single part of your bike. But when I do check it, if I were to come across something like that, I also would remember from my last inspection what sort of shape the bike was in. Maybe it's something that I missed before, in which case, that would give me, cause to be concerned. However, maybe it's something that I've seen before. The reason that you want to do these inspections is also to make you familiar with the bike, because some of this is not set in stone. Some of it is really a judgment call on your part, and you want to decide what shape this bike has to be in for you to ride it, this part of the inspection. You also want to check your tires. Now, if you have a center stand and you can lift your bike up at all, the best way to check them is first to spin them. Make sure that they're not grinding and they spin freely. They don't make a weird noise, which could be an indication of a problem with your bearings. But also you want to grab your tire from the left and right side and try to wiggle it back and forth, which is also a way to check to make sure that your bearings are okay on the tire. Now, I don't really have the equipment to do this. I rely on my mechanic to do it when I take it in. And I take it in, a couple of times in a season, and I get them to check it, but also by default, they tend to check it. You might want to ask them specifically. There's also other parts of your bike that are more specific to your bike, such as, for example, this is a belt-driven bike. So, just while I'm down looking at it, there is a tool for checking the belt on the Indian Scout, and you press it up against the belt. It's got some play in it. It always will have a little bit of play in it. But when you check it, it's only supposed to move a certain distance. Now, I don't have that tool, so what I do is I'm used to the tension on my belt, and I will just check it with my finger, lift it up, and make sure that it hasn't gotten severely loose, or that it hasn't gotten more loose over time, which they tend to do as they stretch. I also inspect it for cracks, for rocks stuck on the inside of the belt, anything that seems out of the ordinary. Next, you want to check the mirrors on your bike because you're going to be using those as you ride. They're not, I don't want to say they're not important. They're very important. But as we get down this list, you're getting down to the stuff that, it's not going to kill you if your mirror fails on your ride. Now the mirror is sort of pointed in the wrong direction. Get it, set up as best as you can. Next, you want to check your kickstand. And that's one of the most often overlooked parts of the inspection is the kickstand because you use it all the time. And, it's the type of thing that you just rely on. But now, since you're looking the bike over, take a really good close look at it and where it mounts to the bike. And, as this is also really part of your chassis check. But take a look and just make sure that there's no cracks in the kickstand itself. If there's a bottom on your kickstand that makes contact with the ground, make sure it's still there, it's not loose, you're not going to lose it. Once that's checked, you're pretty much good to go in terms of your bike. The other stuff that you want to check, obviously, is your personal protective equipment. Check out your helmet, make sure there's no cracks or anything in it, whatever you're going to be wearing. But the bike itself, if you did a thorough inspection, should be good to go. Thanks for watching, and if you like this video, please feel free to click like on it and share it.